Hello everyone and welcome to Tech with Andre, the channel that gives you honest tech reviews. A couple of weeks ago I discussed here on the channel why Apple Silicon Macs, everything from the entry-level M1 that I have here all the way up to the M1 Max recently released, have basically the same problem. They don't really cater to gaming all that well out of the box because macOS doesn't really give proper support. Today's video is different though. It's going to be more of a positive vibe, how you can actually enjoy gaming on your Apple Silicon Mac products. I'm going to share with you free methods, including the one that I use as my own personal choice. So let's get into that right after the intro. The first option is a bit of a no-brainer. Since macOS doesn't provide great gaming support, perhaps using Windows is a better idea. That was very possible until 2020 using Apple's own boot camp on its own Macs, but that's gone the way of the dodo on the new Apple Silicon chips. So you don't have an option out of the box. Luckily, Parallels Desktop has you covered. It's basically a third-party developer that builds an app which allows you to deploy a virtual machine that can run Windows ARM version on your Mac. And it actually supports Windows 11 as of right now, which is absolutely fantastic. However, there are a couple of downsides. Because it involves virtualization, you can only allot part of your hardware resources to the machine running Windows 11, and as such, this wouldn't be optimal for basic entry-level machines like my 13-inch Pro from last year. This has the M1 chip, but it's limited to 8 GB of RAM, so not really ideal. In addition to that, no matter which M1 version of the chip you have, be it the bare bones M1, the M1 Pro, or the M1 Max respectively, they will all have problems on Parallels with certain games simply not running or not loading at all. And that's because Windows itself does not really offer support for Apple's own hardware, and as such you are going to run into issues. If you really need Windows to run on your Mac, then Parallels Desktop is an ideal solution, even though it may have some issues with some games. Personally, I don't really need Windows on my Mac, and because of the aforementioned limitation in hardware, I chose not to go this route. The second workaround to enjoy gaming goes almost along the same lines as Parallels Desktop, and we're talking about Crossover. Crossover is a proprietary Windows compatibility layer for macOS based on Wine, and it's made by developers Code Weavers. As opposed to Parallels, this will not run a virtual machine that has Windows running on top of it, but basically it's a compatibility layer that kind of tricks games into thinking they're running on a full Windows build when in fact they're not. Even though Crossover has a lot of advantages as well, there are still compatibility issues and there are still games that will simply refuse to run at all. And now we get to the third option, which is my preferred method to enjoy gaming. And this one's a little bit out of the left field, but bear with me for a couple of minutes and I'll try to explain why I enjoy it. I'm talking about Nvidia's GeForce Now service, which is basically a cloud gaming solution. As the name implies, this being a cloud service, it doesn't use your hardware pretty much at all. It runs everything in the cloud, basically in Nvidia's data centers, and then the content is just streamed to your MacBook. Why is this my preferred choice? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. First, we're going to have to look at the negatives because, again, there's no perfect solution here, and there are some downsides as well. Since it's a game streaming solution, it depends on you being online for every gaming session, obviously. Not a problem if you're playing popular online games such as League of Legends, or Fortnite or whatever, but it may be a hindrance for some. Going back to the always on part, it also requires that you have a pretty stable and fast internet connection. In my experience, you need above 50 megabits per second to not experience stuttering and lag in game. Another potential problem you might have to deal with is lag. You see, your input from the Mac is sent over the internet to the data center then processes it and sends it back to your Mac accordingly. In my experience, this hasn't been a problem, but you need to take into account your internet connection speed and your proximity to Nvidia's data center. And also, I haven't been impacted by it because probably I'm pretty terrible at gaming anyway, so a little bit more lag wouldn't affect my kill-to-death ratio in any way, I guess. Nvidia's GeForce Now doesn't have any sort of gaming library out of the box, but instead it allows you to connect to your existing gaming library and play games from there. So it allows you to connect to Steam, if I recall correctly, Uplay, and also Galaxy of Games. Now that's all cool, but the reality is the library is actually much smaller than that. At the time of this video, which is January 2022, Nvidia GeForce Now has about 1100 games supported altogether, which is a pretty impressive number, but far short of what Windows machines can achieve. There are still a ton of games that don't really work on Nvidia's platform, and the reality is nobody knows if they're ever coming. So I'm talking about stuff like Grand Theft Auto 5, which has been around for years at this point, yet it's still not available on GeForce Now. I'm talking about the FIFA franchise, the NBA 2K franchise as well. So a lot of different games won't really be playable even with this option. Now, I've made it sound really terrible so far, right? The reality is there's far more benefits and positives that far outweigh the negatives, in my honest opinion. But before we get to that, I want to let you know that if you enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing to the channel, giving a thumbs up to the video so that it can reach a wider audience, and make sure you turn on that bell notification so that you don't miss any of my future videos. Now on to the positives of GeForce Now. The first big advantage I would say is pricing. Nvidia offers 3 different tiers: the free tier, the priority tier, and the RTX 2080 tier. The first tier, the free tier, has a very telling name. You basically don't have to pay anything to test out the service. You just need to download Nvidia's M1 native GeForce Now app, sign up for the service, you don't have to pay anything, and you can just enjoy. There are caveats and limitations. You're limited to gaming sessions that are maximum 1 hour in length. There's also a waiting queue involved. For instance, if you want to play at very popular times, say Friday evening, you might have to wait more than half an hour. It's happened to me in my 2 months of using the free tier. Several times have to wait up to 40 minutes to get a machine. But in my honest opinion, the free tier is the biggest draw because it allows you to basically kick the tires, so to speak, and see if this service is actually for you or not. The second tier is the priority tier. Costs about $10 a month or €10 a month, depending on the region. Prices may vary a little bit, but it's within that ballpark. And this, as the name implies, gives you priority to log in directly and start playing, and the session length goes up to about 6 hours if I recall correctly. The performance is pretty similar to what you will experience in the free tier, so basically 1080p gaming at up to 60 FPS, though a little bit lower in some games. The last tier is the RTX 3080 tier, which is the one that I'm currently subscribed to. That costs $100 or euros for 6 months and promises performance that is more in line with what you'd expect from a machine equipped with an RTX 3080 card. Basically, it allows 1440p gaming at up to 120 FPS, so it really takes advantage of the hardware in the new MacBook Pros. A big plus also to my mind is that you don't use your own resources, and this bodes extremely well for lower end machines like the M1 Pro that I have here or the MacBook Air. You don't need your own storage. The games are completely installed and run on Nvidia's stuff, so you don't have to care about that. You also don't need to care about patches or updates to the games. These are handled automatically by Nvidia. And because the app itself is M1 native, the performance draw is really limited. And as such, it takes advantage of one of the big strengths of the MacBooks powered by Apple Silicon, namely long battery life. So this means you'll be able to enjoy several hours at a time of gaming sessions without a worry that you're going to need to plug in your MacBook to a socket, so that's a big win. So all in all, what should we conclude from this video? First step, don't buy a Mac if you're into gaming, right? Well, no. The Macs, like I said before, don't really cater to gaming all that well, but there are options out there to enjoy a ton of games on these machines. I personally consider the Nvidia GeForce Now option to be the best out of the 3 presented today, but you have the option to test whichever method you want on your own machine. Just remember that gaming is supposed to be fun and rewarding and be a pastime that you enjoy, and don't really dwell on the fact that maybe it's not as easy to enjoy gaming on the MacBooks as you would have liked. With that being said, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and to sub to the channel, and I will see you on the next one.